Hey, hey, welcome everyone to Astro Demo Days, Astro September Demo Days. My name is Fred K. Schott. I am going to be emceeing this event, and we have some great talks coming up from our community and also from some of the core maintainers about the future of Astro. To get us started, we have a great talk from Matthew, but before then, I have a few things. Where'd they go? The most important thing, we're doing chat in Discord. So we have a great Discord community. That's astro.build/chat. Let me get a little banner up. Astro.build/chat. Boom. That's a link to our Discord community where there is already live chat happening. If you're in there, give a little, I don't know, we need a cool emote, but some sort of give a little Astro emoji. That's where we're going to be doing live chat. So it's easy to join if you're not a member yet. It's a great place for all things Astro. Let's see what else is here. We've got a great chat, a great talk coming up about the REPL, which you might have seen last week. Nate and Drew are going to be showing that off. We got some other great talks about VS Code extensions, your favorite CMS, SEO, and some exciting, just really cool stuff to show off from everyone. So that's it for me. I'll stop talking, and I will bring in our first speaker, which is Matthew. Hello, Matthew.
Hey, you got to unmute yourself for us to work. How's it going, Fred?
It's going great. I will leave you to it.
All right, let me share my screen, and let's get started. Today, I am going to be talking about the Astro language tools, and this is the project that powers our VS Code extension. So yeah, we're looking at an editor here. As you can see, looking at a .astro file. So first, before I get into like how you actually, make changes, zoom my screen a little bit more and make sure it's very clear. Let's just go over kind of what the VS Code extension does and what a VS Code extension even means. So any feature that you get from an editor, such as go to definition, let's just kind of do that. That takes you to a different file. As you can see, we can like hover over something and it will show us information about that, contextual information about the thing that we're looking at. That's from the extension. If we were to make any type of errors, like oh, this is not a string, this error information comes from the extension, and so on and so forth. So this is kind of what the power of extensions are, is that your editor knows about your about the text, but it doesn't know what the text is supposed to do. It doesn't know about the language behind the text. So anyways, this is what creating the VS Code extension gives us. Now I'm going to show you how that works and like how the development process works as well. So let's look at a feature we don't have. So it's possible in the editor to like rename things. So like I have this variable here. Let's say I want to change the name of that variable. Now usually you would right click on this and go to rename symbol, I think is what it's called. We actually have not implemented that yet. So let's do that. Let's actually get into that. So the Astro language tools project is where we have all the code for the editor. I'm going to show you how that's broken down here in a second, but there actually is a issue about this already. Rename. So in this example, we want to rename date to something else. So we can actually implement this pretty quickly. Now I cheated and I already implemented this, but anyways, let's go through it. Okay, so I have the project here locally. Let's see. Now, if I do a yarn, it's going to do an install. Then I do a yarn build, and that's going to actually build the project. And now I'm ready to go. Now, the first thing you need to do when you want to make changes to the extension locally is you want to actually turn off the extension that you have installed. If you don't do this, the extension you're running locally and the extension you have installed in your editor will like interfere with each other. I just don't trust it. I always disable mine. So let me open up the project, Astro language tools, and I'll go over kind of how the project is structured. So we have kind of two major, this is a mono repo, a lot like the main Astro repo. And we have a couple of projects, zoom terminal even more. Let's do this. Okay, we have two main projects here. We have the VS Code project. This is the actual extension that runs inside your editor. There's kind of two main components of this. There is these language.json files. And what these do is these describe the grammar of the Astro language, and this provides syntax highlighting. That's very important. The second thing this does is it has this kind of entry point, actual TypeScript, JavaScript file. And the main thing that this does is it launches the Astro language server. And the Astro language server is the thing that gives us all of our editing feature. It does, hover support, go to definition, rename that we're getting ready to implement. All those things are part of the language server. So that's really kind of where you spend most of your time if you're making changes. So let me just open that up and go over how that's actually structured. Oh, am I in the wrong branch? I'm in the wrong branch. How is that possible? Yarn. No, I'm not. Oh no, it's because I just made a change. Anyways, yeah. So kind of the entry point is we have a server. This is a language server, and this file is what does all of the work. What it does is it receives requests from the editor through kind of like an event emitter system. We get a request for hover, we get a request for definitions, we get a request for signature, and in a second, we're going to get a request for rename support as well. And we kind of listen to all these things through an event emitter system, and then we have it structured into a set of plugins. And what a plugin, we call it a plugin, but all it really is a way for us to kind of organize our code so that the CSS features happen inside of the CSS plugin. HTML features, like divs and spans and all those things, that happens inside of the HTML. TypeScript is like anything in that component script section, the front matter section. All of that, the TypeScript component kind of handles that. And lastly, Astro is mostly the features that we add as part of Astro, like for example, Astro components and all those types of things. So we've kind of broken it down by like what section of the document you're actually working on. So I'm going to, like I said, I cheated, and I'm going to show off my changes in this diff, but I'm actually going to also check out the branch. And let me stash my changes. So yeah, you want to do a yarn, and then you want to do a yarn build, just like always. And then if you run yarn dev, actually I probably didn't need to do a full build. If you run yarn dev, that actually sets up a watch mode. And then from there, if you go to run and debug, and then click on launch extension, actually launch the extension, that will bring up a new window. And now this window is running, my extension that I'm developing is running inside of this. So any changes I make, we can see that rename symbol is here, will actually show up here. Now, some cool things that you can do. Actually, let me break down how this is actually implemented. So we have a diff here. In our main file here, we have what we call, capabilities. And what this does is it describes what capabilities our extension has. As you can see, we added rename provider here. So rename provider says that we support rename, right? And then down here, just like I said, there's all these event emitters. We have on rename request, and we're just piping that on name request to our plugin host. That's kind of our plugin system. And the plugin system is actually responsible for calling all the different plugins to see, can you give me any rename information? In this case, the TypeScript plugin handles all of the renaming stuff for us. So let's actually step in and debug the code and see what happens. If we are to set a breakpoint, like right here, let me just make this bigger, and we try to do a rename in our editor, rename symbol to testing, we can see we actually hit breakpoints. So this is very useful for the same reason that you like to hit breakpoints in anywhere else in your code, is you can actually step through it. You can see that the rename is actually there. And if you have any issues, you can step through it and figure out what the problem is. I'm just going to let this go. Let me just briefly explain what this is actually doing. There's kind of this TypeScript document that we have, which, the TypeScript compiler APIs they have all of these abilities already built. So we lean on the TypeScript compiler quite a bit, as much as possible inside of the VS Code extension. That's what we're doing here, is we're actually asking the TypeScript compiler, like, give me any rename information. It gives us those renames. And then we just modify those and give it back to what the response expects. The response expects this workspace edit object. So we're just turning those into a workspace edit object. And let me go again and just see, did it actually happen? Yep, as you can see, rename symbol. We've actually implemented this feature in very, very few lines of code. It's actually pretty easy to do this. So the main things to know is that you need to tell the language server that you support this feature. You need to set your event emitter. And then from there, it's mostly just plugging in code to make sure you handle it in the right place. If it's an HTML style plugin, you handle it there. If it's anything kind of in the component script section, that's using the TypeScript plugin. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to explain, how all this works. But that's kind of a brief overview of the VS Code extension. I have this branch out. I'm actually not gonna send a PR for this because I think it probably needs a little bit more work. As you can see, I only tested in one place. It'd be great to make sure it works in more scenarios. So I'm gonna post this in the Discord, and if someone wants to take this over and submit a PR for this, that'd be great. And I think that is enough of my sharing. I think I've shown enough.
Awesome, Matthew. That was great.
Thank you.
I mean, I feel like VS Code, like the whole ecosystem, is notoriously like under-documented. How did you learn all this? Like, how did you get comfortable with this?
That's a great question. I felt that as well. I will say that there are some good YouTube videos out there. I kind of skim through those. Kind of my own personal learning style is I like to just like dive into code and like figure out how stuff happens. So what I did is I found other extensions that people had built and kind of looked at how they implemented things, because they're all using these APIs, and that kind of helped me learn what the APIs were. And eventually I just kind of got, oh yeah, you got to add a capability, then you got to do this there. So yeah, just kind of learn on the fly. But I will say that there are some resources on YouTube as well.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. That was Matthew talking about VS Code extensions. And up next we have Tony. And I have only seen this written out, so I apologize. The first time I said it with my mouth. Navilis. Tony.
Yep. It's my last name backwards. It's nothing too fancy.
That's like a weird trick that your last name backwards actually sounds kind of nice.
Yep.
Yeah. Very cool. Tony is going to be talking to us about forestry and CMSs and using it all with Astro.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, Fred.
Of course, take it away.
All right, let me add my screen here. So the first thing, or what I want to go over today, we're actually going to be looking at how to tie in forestry with Astro. And there we go. So we're going to be looking at how to tie forestry in on Astro here. And what's really interesting that we're doing here is actually going to be tying in, building like a block layout. So you'll see this a lot with headless CMSs. You design your UI on the website to kind of be these block components that then the client can take and drag and drop to move around and basically have a custom page builder with their own design. And what we want to see is how we can actually do that with a static site generator coming only out of Markdown files that's stored in Git. So the tools we're using here, I'll just run through real quick. Forestry is a Git-based CMS, which basically means it's holding all of your content, but it's saved in Markdown files in your Git repository. They aren't sitting on their server anywhere. And more interestingly, as you're developing, everything's local. You could actually run these sites on your machine if your internet connection dies. You don't have any kind of issues with that. Netlify is what we're actually going to show how to deploy it to. There's a whole bunch of other features you can use from Netlify. They've got authentication and form management, all kinds of stuff. And then Astro, obviously. This would be a weird demo here if I wasn't actually using Astro. So to jump over to the live site we're using, this is still in development. So it's not actually live yet. You guys are all getting a preview here. But to just kind of run through how this page is set up, it's pulling all of this content out of forestry. And you've got the hero section, right? This is a text block that when you go onto mobile rearranges itself to look good on a phone. Another big block below it. Same thing on mobile. The image snaps up above the text and kind of centers everything. A card layout, really common. This is a pretty interesting one because you have the one block with nested cards inside of it that we're actually managing in the CMS. So if I jump over to forestry, where this is a bit more interesting, you can see on the left here, they have a front matter section. And this is actually the definition for all of our different data types, right? So starting just with the page, you can define your title and the description and your share image. You can actually, in here, we're defining the URL. So this is actually what will be where Astro will build the HTML output. And then the content blocks, which is just a list of all of the different UI blocks that we've defined. So for example, the hero block, right? You've got your different properties in here, including the background image, the call to action button, all that kind of stuff. The card block, which I had shown, you can see there's actually kind of a nested setup here. So cards is a repeatable field group, which allows you to put in multiple instances of a card, each with its own title and content, and again, a call to action button. If I come over here to global settings, looking at our main menu, let me zoom in a little bit for you. You can actually see on our main menu, we're tying in our pages. And in these pages, this is directly referencing the pages themselves. So it's not doing any kind of hand wavy, let's hope the URLs match. This is tying directly to any of the pages that are defined in the CMS, which is a really cool feature of how forestry sets up their like reference types. So let's jump into some of the code here. I cheated a little bit and pulled out the source code into some slides here because it's a whole lot easier than me trying to fumble through Visual Studio's code. So here's another example, kind of what we were looking at, the front matter templates. But let's start looking at some of the code here. So as Matthew was actually just talking about, we have TypeScript definitions now. And I'm actually taking advantage of that here and defining types for all of the blocks that we put into forestry. So for the hero section, having a block that says, here's what your template type is. This is how I know what UI component to tie to it. The title of it, content, which I do this for convenience. It's really just saying it's a string up here. And there's also a type definition underneath it, saying where I basically OR together all of the different blocks. So I can reference just a list of blocks and come back later and figure out which one it was. In the Astro component, I'm actually pulling in the same thing. So in the props interface, which is fully supported in the VS Code settings right now, right? It's very handy. This is where it will actually yell at me and throw red lines everywhere if I use the wrong property types. So I'm pulling in the CMS hero block type and starting to destructure it, and then drop the title that was in the CMS coming out of forestry right into the H1 tag as the example here. And then looking at the routing, because this is really the most interesting part, I think. There's the source/pages directory, and that's where Astro builds all of your pages. But this is a bit more dynamic. It's coming out of forestry somehow, right? So how do you tie that in there? So this is how I actually ended up setting up the data. So inside of my source directory, there's a data/pages, which is what forestry pulls all of that markdown out of and what it saves to when you make changes. And then there's separately the pages directory, which Astro uses. And I'm just using an index and a slug, and that's it. Everything else, the slug is grabbing a URL out of the pages directory, which we can see here. So I'm using get static paths. This is inside of the slug.astro file. I grab every markdown file out of the pages, and I map through and I find the href, find the URL that we defined in forestry, and basically tell Astro, here's all the pages you need, and here's their URLs. And that's really all there is to it. I've got the props coming in here, just pull out the page, drop it into my layout, which ultimately is right here. You can see there's, again, a TypeScript definition for the page. And coming in from the page, I pull out things like the title or the description, and I build these helper functions, which is a really interesting TypeScript model. So you can have these kind of is helpers. This function takes in any of the blocks. That's where I OR'd together the hero block, the image block, the card block, and I can return true or false. And depending on what I return, it actually tells TypeScript, if this function returns true, that block must have been a hero block. And it can start inferring the property types of a hero block. So down here is where the layout loops through all the blocks on the page, just checks their types. If it's a hero block, take the hero block Astro component, give it its data, and everything renders. And they're ultimately here, I'm just showing the example of the hero. There'd be if-else checks all the way down for all of the different forestry types. And that's really all there is to it. At this point, you can go into forestry, add custom pages, move blocks around. You can kind of do anything you want within the design that you started with. Adding new blocks isn't a big deal anymore because everything's using kind of this shared styling and this kind of plug-in interface. I ended up with very little code here to build out. I think we have 10 pages on the site right now. The last step here is deploying to Netlify. The CI/CD is usually my least favorite day on a project, having to do all of the configuration files and getting everything set up. But with using something like Forestry and Astro and tying it into Netlify, it is basically this. The entire step was to tie it to my Git repository. Netlify actually figured out what the build commands and the publish directory were. I didn't have to do a thing. I literally just tied it to the Git repository, which is great. From there, I can tie it onto custom domains. Maybe later I'll pull in their form validation and form support for, say, a contact form where I want some spam protection, that kind of stuff. And that's really all there is to it. I ran through that pretty quickly. Like I said, this site is not live yet, but pretty soon, once it's live, I'll actually be making the code for this whole site public, so anybody could go check it out. I'll actually tweet that out. If anybody wants to follow me on there, just keep an eye out. Maybe it'll show up in the Astro Discord as well. From there, I think I am about out of time, and I will pass it back to our MC.
That was great. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
That like Netlify magic comes from we just I mean, they're a great sponsor of Astro. Really great exclusive kind of like hosting partners for us. So they've added a bunch of Astro features lately, including automatic detection of, oh, this is an Astro project. Let me set up all the config.
Yep, it's awesome having that stuff just work out of the box.
Yeah, deploying can be a nightmare if you're wading through the darkness in it. So yeah, having them help out has been good.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Great.
That was Tony talking about CMS in the world of forestry. He's posting that link in chat to anyone who wants to go check it out. And yeah, it was a great talk. Next up, we have Jonas. Jonas, how are you doing?
Hey, good. And you?
Doing well. Can you say your last name for me? Because you told me a second ago, and I knew I was going to butcher it, so I just...
That's all right. Schumacher. It's in German. Probably shoemaker in English. It would be.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I knew I would just totally destroy that. That's a me thing. But it's great.
Totally understand.
Really excited to see the SEO component you've been building, and yeah, why don't you just jump right into it?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Will do. We'll quickly share my screen here. Let's see. Not everything. Not my notes. Yeah. I need to zoom that probably. Okay, that should work, right? No. How do I zoom that? Okay. Great. Yeah, I'm Jonas. I'm a developer from Germany. I work for a startup in the sports tech field. And yeah, there I'm kind of the tech lead for the web stuff. And we did a rebuild of our website, and it came down to deciding if we wanted to go with Next.js or Astro. And since Astro said that it isn't ready for prime time yet, we decided we will go with Next for now. But I was really excited about Astro, about the possibilities, about the whole space. And yeah, in the end, I wanted to make sure that when it came down to it again, that the whole Astro ecosystem would be ready. And one thing we are using with Next.js is actually Next SEO. That's a plugin for Next that handles all the SEO tags for you. And that's when I decided, okay, I want that for Astro when we switch over. And I decided to build Astro SEO. It's component. Oh, no. So it's a component. Sorry, I was just called for some reason. It's a component that makes it very easy to add all the tags relevant to SEO to your Astro pages. And here's a usage example, but I will show you a more complete one real quick. I think I will need to switch over to my VS Code real quick that you should now see. So yeah, this is basically a whole usage example of how to use Astro SEO. You would just import SEO. In this case, it's index.js, but because that's the tests from the repo itself. But in your case, there would be just Astro SEO here after you installed it. And then you can use it in your head and pass the parameters to it, like the title, the type, etc., like the whole open graph stuff, etc. And all of these are documented for you over on GitHub, which I will show you again now. Basically down here. So you really don't need to know what the options for SEO are before. You can just go here, see what options you have, and then use the ones that are relevant to you. And that's basically it, really. So what I thought I would do is to talk a bit about the whole process of writing Astro component and then releasing it, because this was actually my first open source project. And it was a lot of fun doing it because the Astro community is so great. I'm not entirely sure if you can see my screen, actually. Sorry for that, but now you should be able to. Sorry, yeah. So these are the options. Yeah, what I thought I would do is go through the process, telling you how to do it, because it was my first time writing some of these. And the Astro community makes it very easy for you to get started doing open source. And the first thing I did was look at the Astro Discord itself. So I knew it was plugged before, but please just, the link is down here on the main page, as far as I know, a bit small, but go there, look at all the stuff that they are presenting, etc., and get inspired. And then actually Astro has a whole documentation page just for publishing NPM packages of your components. And that way it goes through all the stuff you need to set up, all of the stuff you need to do, like even how you would test it, which is new. It wasn't there when I started a few weeks ago. So these things move very fast with Astro. And yeah, then in the end, it even says how to deploy something, etc. And that makes it super easy to write your own. And the thing is, when I started, I mean, I've been developing for quite some time now, but I always had huge respect for even the smallest project on GitHub, and I still do. But for me, it was like a bit too much, maybe, because I was afraid of starting my own. So what I wanted to do is show you that, yeah, it doesn't need to be perfect, what you do, what you put out at first. And for that, I decided to not do what I wanted to do, which was to clean up the code of Astro SEO as it is now. I just wanted to show you how it is like today, really. You can just look at it on GitHub, of course. And this is the whole thing. There's nothing more to it. Mostly it's typing up here. And then down here, it's functions mixed together with the stuff I did before. I basically switched the way I do it before, like in the last release. And I didn't come around to switching the stuff from the last release yet, but I wanted to do a feature release, so I just put it in there, and it's right now it's all over the place. I will clean it up in the near future, but it's still working, right? It's still a functioning Astro component you can use. The code isn't perfect, but I hope it helps some people out there doing their SEO. And yeah, this kind of stuff, seeing this kind of stuff would help me. Just to know, okay, yeah, I can put something together, I can release it and then iterate on it, making it better over time. And these are a lot of lines actually. But then I thought the other day there was a different component released on the Discord. It was shown there, which is far smaller, but does a more interesting thing than SEO does, I would say. That's Astro Command. It's a package that allows you to basically run any script you want that puts out HTML to your standard out, and then it renders that into your Astro component at build time. And the idea sounds complex, but the code actually isn't. If you look at the code here on GitHub, it's just 13 lines of code, if I counted correctly. Not here. You can just look at it, Command Astro, and it's just these few lines of code that actually enable a whole lot of possibilities. And it's just about the idea, not the complexity of the code or anything. You can just put this together and see what other people make from it. And I found that very inspiring to see, actually, because the idea is so cool and the code so simple and not complex. Yeah, I thought I'd show that to you just as kind of an inspiration of what can be done just as a start if you want to venture into open source, so to speak. Like here, the maker is Steven Solka. You can follow him on Twitter. And he also has this great example of how to use pyplot and pandox, where he calls basically a Python script inside his, in this case, a LaTeX script inside his Astro component, and then rendered this to his final page, so to speak. And yeah, that's basically it. It doesn't need to be complex. It doesn't need to be a lot of code, just a good idea. And Astro really helps you releasing it, and the community is great. So yeah, that's it from me.
That was great. Thank you, Jonas. Yeah, that Astro command package is totally mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is, right? And it's just 13 lines of code. It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, like, oh, there's JSX, there's React, there's Svelte, but what if we just called a CLI and whatever that output was becomes a component?
Whatever it is, you can just use anything.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, great work on the SEO. I can't believe that's your first open source project. It really, you did documentation. I feel like
yeah,
it's pretty well documented.
Thank you. Yeah, that was actually one of the goals, just to make it very easy to use and a good place to start with your SEO stuff.
Yeah, well, awesome work, really. Well done.
Thank you.
All right, and that brings us to our last speakers, Nate and Drew. Let me bring them up on screen. There they are. Nate is calling in from space. Drew is calling in from a home, like a normal person.
I can see Nate, though. Hi.
They're going to talk about some new stuff coming soon to Astro, so this is a pretty exciting talk. Really looking forward to it. I'll let you guys take it from here.
Awesome. I think Drew has some slides for us.
Yeah. So we're Drew and Nate. We're two of the core maintainers on Astro. And yeah, I'm going to start off talking a little bit of background and going to kind of tee up Nate's demo. Let me just share my screen. Let's see here. So yeah, internally we've had a lot of conversations of, what is Astro V1. So we're not here to talk about Astro V1 feature set. That'll be in the future and super exciting. But we've been talking about what are some ways that are, or what are some blockers that are making V1 as cool as it could be, or like how can we expand the future of Astro. So to start, thinking about the Astro beta, when we launched Astro in June, we started building it more as a proof of concept. We just asked, could we make a better static site generator? So we pulled in what was existing. We kind of did what we could. Overall, we prioritize rapid experimentation. If it works, use it, release quickly and often. And the community response is a testament to how well that worked. And it's just been so awesome to have the Discord and awesome feedback from a lot of people that this resonated with. It kind of got us talking about like the roadmap, to V1. Okay, like this concept is good. How can we turn this into like a stable platform that you'd want to build on and something that it really stands the test of time? So we kind of took a look at just in our short time of having released Astro, we took a look at some blockers and some problems. The existing compiler we had was slow. It was buggy. Some of Snowpack's assumptions about how websites could work started limiting Astro. That all kind of led us to come up with what we saw were focuses. So the last few weeks we've been focused on what we saw as blockers, kind of limiting the future of Astro, limiting what we could build with this. So we kind of landed on two key things that releasing these would just open up the future and just release a really stable foundation. A new Astro compiler, and then moving to Vite as our core engine. So the first thing, the Astro Go compiler, was primarily Nate's project. So I'll hand it off to Nate to talk about. But these were kind of some of the questions there.
Yeah. This really started out as kind of an experiment. Just thinking about, what can we do for our compiler to make it as fast as possible. That's really important when it comes to scale. When you have thousands of pages, every millisecond counts. So that was part of the inspiration for moving out of JavaScript to a language like Go. But of course, we also wanted to leverage prior art, make it easy to contribute. So the vast majority of Astro remains in JavaScript. So the Go piece is WebAssembly, which is great because it's super portable. It runs in the browser. It runs in Node. It runs in Deno. You can kind of take this wherever you want and run it. So yeah, really excited about the future of the compiler. And if you want to jump to the next slide, Drew, we can get into some of the exciting things. It's really fast. You may have seen the REPL, which we'll get into in a little bit, but it's a matter of milliseconds to compile each file. And that's not a huge deal compared to like our current one is like a couple hundred milliseconds, which is not terrible. But like I said, at scale, you really start to notice, 200 milliseconds versus 50 or even less than that. It's also, if you want to jump to the next slide, one of the things we were doing before in the spirit of like move fast, get everything working, we leaned on VDOM. So basically your Astro templates get compiled to a bunch of H calls that we would then compile on the server. But when you take a step back, you realize like you kind of have all the information you already need in your file. So on the right there is the new output. We basically have a tag template literal, and it's just a string of HTML. So anything that's not dynamic, we already have that information in the file. We don't need to waste our time making a virtual DOM and then rendering that back to a string. So in the future, things like static site generation or server-side rendering, you want that super fast response time. If you're just concatenating a string, that's going to be a lot faster. Next slide. And the other cool thing in leveraging prior art is, Go has this amazing HTML package that we were able to build on top of. So one really cool thing, HTML is super loose. It's really fault tolerant. So the Astro compiler is now too. It basically follows the spec as well as the Go HTML package does. And, you know, it'll kind of correct things for you so that you can write HTML flexibly, and it will, you know, make your output spec compliant. That's really exciting.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, we'll we'll get more into some of these features. These were just really good slide callouts. Nate still has a ton of cool stuff to show that's even better than this. So right before the demo, I'll kind of talk about a little bit of the experience moving to Vite. So yeah, switching to Vite brought us several great things. There's a lot to like: faster startup, quicker changes, better HMR, which we'll have in the demo. It has a robust SSR API, better optimizations out of the box. And lastly, lets the Astro team focus 100% on Astro. So with Snowpack being maintained by the same people, if we're focused on continually improving Snowpack as well, we can't be 100% focused on Astro. And it was just kind of a no-brainer when we get all these other great things for free. So just to give a preview of some stuff we've seen just in our limited time with Vite, we've seen a big improvement to performance. So this does include the compiler, right? But there's some other stuff going on that's just a little bit more optimized. Quicker dev server start, seeing quicker production builds. Little note, these are really early numbers. These are kind of simple example projects that we have in the repo. So don't get hung up on like the exact numbers, like the 5 times or 20 times faster. The major point is that we're seeing it's faster. Like the numbers are going in the right direction. So we are seeing significant speed increases. And then as we get closer to a stable release, we'll get to see more real world stats on just how much faster it is. So stay tuned to that. And yeah, lots of little fun things to discover, like automatic HTML minification and production builds, and then file hashing. So like your caching stories handled a little for you out of box too. Just the user experience is a little bit nicer. You can use in a script tag, you can use plain specifier npm resolution, and it'll prepare it for the client for you automatically, assuming it is a client compatible package. You can also reference TS and TXS files more easily in places that you might not have been able to in the past. And lastly, just the user experience. Up top here, we have what some of you have seen. Sometimes you get this cryptic build result error if you meet the magic series of steps. In more places, we have more exact code frames. We can show you the line of code, the file that it errored, what the error is. So across the board, you're going to see a lot friendlier error messages on what syntax went wrong, if at all.
Yeah, and that's kind of a marriage of the new compiler and Vite working together. So the new compiler has source map support, and Vite also has phenomenal source map support. So you can track the file exactly, track that error right back to your source.
Yeah. So there's so much to talk about, but I feel like y'all want a demo. So I'm going to pass it over to Nate, and you'll get to see some of these really cool things in action.
Yeah, let's do it. So one thing that you may have heard about recently was the Astro REPL. So this is at astro.build/play. You can play around with it now. We just wanted to get this compiler in your hands as soon as possible. But there's a lot of really cool stuff here. You'll see we have an initial compile time of like 1 second. That involves like instantiating the WebAssembly module, and there's a lot of work going on here. But then as we type, we're getting like consistently really fast compile times. So that is super exciting. Another cool thing about the REPL, you can import like date functions and just a package that you love, and we'll resolve it to Skypack for you. But you can see this is actually rendering. If we remove this, this is running date functions for you. Everything is live as you're typing because the compiler is so fast. We can just update your preview immediately. And then there's some really exciting stuff about this output here. So I'm going to jump over to another example. So yeah, we have completely changed how we're rendering your file. There's no more VDOM. This is like a very tailored output for SSR. So what happens in other frameworks is they need kind of this switch between, are you on the server, are you on the client, so they can do some optimizations. For us, we're always going to be on the server. So we can just do a tag template literal and make this as fast as possible to actually render. Getting into some of this, so you can see that we have a papaya whip page here. Just wanted to go through some new features of the compiler. So one really exciting thing is that if you look in our output here, you can see this HTML comment is preserved. So we kind of had a lossy rendering before where, white space and comments would not be rendered out, but now they are. So you're really getting everything. You can see we have scope styles and all that great stuff that you're used to. Another really cool feature that we added, there's an RFC for define variables. So if we were to put our color in here, you can see, we're going to, define some style variables for this. So previously there was really no way to reference a value from up here. You could you'd have to do this where, you would go like style equals, and then reference your variable here. So yeah, you can see this is still working. And then I just have a little example here. If we're going to show off how fast it is, let's just pull something from this CSS color names package. This is just a JSON object of all the built-in CSS colors. So instead of doing this, where we're passing it in directly, we can just say define vars. And this is going to say our color. So now we have this color variable exposed for us. So yeah, there's like a lot of really cool things that unlocks, and that'll also work with script tags.
And I also want to say too, that's also a product of moving the styles into the compiler, which they weren't before. Before we did a lot of processing with post CSS, and now that's actually done in the Go library at the same time. So there's a performance aspect of we don't have to do multiple passes; it all happens in one. But there's also some really, really cool stuff of like having shared context between your styles in HTML too.
Yeah. This is like very nitty gritty in the details of the compiler, but just the way that we're, hoisting imports out and moving some things into the function. So you have that like top level await. And then, yeah, we're pushing up all the styles to the head directly. So I'll show that off in a bit. But styles and scripts can be optimized, and there's a lot to love about this new output here. So I wanted to show off Vite. I know everybody's really excited about that. And Drew has been doing an amazing job working on getting this new compiler in. One of the things we've noticed is like it's so much less code in the code base of Astro itself, which is great for maintainability. So yeah, I just wanted to show off. I don't have any cached thing. So our cold start here is about, a couple seconds. Yeah, it's like 2 seconds, but that's just a cold start. And that's, going to get a lot better once you're actually developing. Let me just make sure these are both open here. So, this is just a very small example, but the response time as we update things is also really fast. Show that. So like 12 milliseconds, there's caching going on that we're getting for free from Vite, which is great. And one feature that we added here, so you have your components, and we've always had HMR. That was like table stakes. But what we didn't have was stateful HMR. So we would just like refresh the whole page when anything changed. So now what we can do that's really exciting, if we look at this, there's going to be no page refresh. And we're just going to, let's see, meetings. Welcome to. So this page is actually, reloading, not reloading, but refreshing the content immediately, and we're not losing our state in these components, which is just going to speed up your development cycle. It's really exciting. So, other than that, we have some exciting news about Markdown. So if I go to this Markdown page, you'll see, everything is rendering like you'd expect. But we also have kind of from the beginning of Astro realized that if we're going to have Markdown pages, we really want, components in there and exciting stuff like that. So one thing we can do now, you used to be able to do like layout and then just reference a file. But what you can do now is we've added this support for a setup, which will actually take some JavaScript. So if I import my layout from, let me just show you my files. There's a layout here. So layouts / layout.astro. This is just automatically going to apply because we imported something named layout. But that's something we already have. Something we don't have is a way to reference components in our Markdown. So I'm just going to import the preact counter, which is TSX. This is a really straightforward just counter example, but one of the great things here, client load. Oh, layouts. It's in components. Do it. Great. So yeah, we have this. Same thing. We still have that stateful HMR, even with our Markdown, which is really awesome. And yeah, you can also use this pattern for a lot of things. So, if you have some Markdown content, right now our Markdown is recursive, which is not technically common mark compliant. So we've also fixed that. If we have our block.astro, if we wanted to accept some children here, we can do that. And all you have to do is add an extra space. And yeah, this updates live, and you can see that the HTML output here is actually rendering the H1, and we're getting everything you love about Astro in your Markdown as well. So I'm super excited about this. I think there's a lot of amazing things to come, and we're on a very good path here towards Astro V1. Drew, do you have anything to add?
No, I think we've covered everything for now. I'm just super excited.
I'm super excited too. when are we going to get this out? When can people get their hands on this?
Wow. I'm so glad you asked, Nate. Yeah, we're gonna open up a pull request to GitHub within the next day, so you can kick the tires yourself, and we will have our first release on NPM for you to try it out within the next day, either today or tomorrow, and we'll start publishing some regular NPM releases so that y'all can track progress.
Yeah, it's a really big change. It's really been a rewrite, so it's not. The goal is to get it to be a drop-in, but right now we're still working on stability and getting right there. But we're going to get the code public and let everybody take a peek at what's going on and be able to pull it in and see what's not working. So yeah, I'm super excited. This has been an awesome demo day. Just love the community contributions and thank you all for tuning in. Definitely don't want to take it away from Fred.
You're stepping on my lines.
Sorry.
You're fine. No, I mean, just to sing your praises, honestly, the two of you have both been working on this for a while. I think as a kind of cool experiment, maybe this will work, and then it just snowballed from there.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, weeks, if not months, of really kicking the tires on this to where we're at today. So can't stress enough just like what an awesome engineering accomplishment this has been. And to do a rewrite, with the goal of a pretty much drop-in replacement is no easy task, especially when you bring in WASM and next-gen build tools and CSS handling. There's a lot of cool stuff going on right here. So
yeah,
awesome work to both of you.
Thank you. And this really all sets the stage for V1. This is a much better base that we feel confident in moving forward.
Yeah, it's hard to, this feels like, seeing that output especially is like, oh, that's like proof of concept versus the lean, mean kind of fighting V1 Astro. So yeah, this is such a great base. I feel like, a V1 and beyond can definitely grow on top of this.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Thank you both. That was my question. When can we get a handle on this? So PR in the next couple of days, preview releases coming out of that PR, and eventually NPM install Astro once it feels stable. But we'll keep it in the PR for now. Let you guys kick the tires.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
What are we doing? What am I doing? There we go. That concludes our demo days. Thank you to all of our great speakers. Really some great talks from both the community and from the core maintainers. Really excited to get some of this stuff in your hands, both on the Astro side and also that SEO component. I'm personally excited to play around with. So again, thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, or if you're watching this later and you made it this far, hats off to you. That's very impressive. And we should have more great stuff to show in the coming months, especially as some of the stuff gets more mature. So please follow along on Twitter at astro.build. And Discord is where everything happens for this community, from ideas bouncing around to showing off new things to support. So definitely join our Discord. I think I even have the banner. Aha, still there. That's the link to our Discord community where you can follow along and get involved. A ton of great energy, and just love hearing so many people shout out that community. It's been a real pleasure getting to know everyone there. Look at that. That's the first conference. We're ending right on time. Not early, not late. It's 11 o'clock my time. Yeah, thank you all for joining. I'll see you all on Discord, Twitter. If you're in the chat, give a big shout out to all of our speakers. It means a lot. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.